Welcome back to Standard 4A. In the first part of this presentation, we tried to explain the motivations of the explorers and the conquistadors. In the second half of the standard, we will try and explain the roles played by the explorers and conquistadors. Just so that we're clear here on these terms, by explorers, we're really referring to the people who discovered new lands. By conquistadors, we're looking at the people who actually took them over. It's one thing for an explorer to hop out of the boat and plant the flag on the beach and say, I claim this land for Spain, or I claim this land for France. It's a very different thing for that country to then physically take possession of that piece of land and really make it theirs. So that's our difference between an explorer and a conquistador. Okay, so we'll go back in time here and take a look at our essential question for this half of the standard. And we're looking at who were some of the important explorers and conquistadors during the age of exploration. Our essential understandings are the same as for the first half. We won't spend as much time here. If you need these reviewed or explained a little more, I suggest you go back and look at the first part of Standard 4A. But the idea that at this time in the late 1400s into the 1500s, European economies are expanding, they're doing well. And that's promoting increased trade with markets in Asia, especially for luxury products, things like spices, things like textiles, things like porcelain. All that's going along fairly well the way Europeans like it until 1453 with the capture of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks. And that event is really going to change the balance of economic power in the Middle East. The European merchants who had been going through Constantinople on their way to the Asian markets now have to do business with the Muslim Ottoman Turks. Okay, and from a business point of view, this increased the cost of doing trade, and we're going to see the Atlantic fronting countries, countries like Portugal, Spain, England, and France, look for new alternative ways, new maritime trade routes to reach the markets in Asia. Okay, just to recap from our first half, Constantinople is here in the circle. The trade routes pass through Constantinople, which are now in the hands of a new power, the Ottoman Turks. We can try and look at this as a school example. Here's you. I don't know why you're an alligator. It was the best clip art I could find. And these are the routes you follow to school, class each day. These are the routes you follow from science to math, from math to history, history to lunch. Okay, and pretty much most of you from the first week or so of school have followed the same path each day. It's the rare student who says, well, it's Tuesday, so I'm going to go this way. No, it's Wednesday, I'm going to go another way. Most of us are creatures of habit. We found a way to class, and we tend to stick with it. Unless something crops up that causes us to need to go a different way. Let's say, for example, you cut class. Not that anybody watching this video would do such a thing, but your teacher that you cut class, I don't know why they're a bird. Again, it's the best clip art I could find. Their classroom is in that hallway that you normally go on the way to your next class. You don't want them to see you because then you're going to get in trouble. In other words, that's created a stop on your normal way. You now need to find an alternative way around that. Okay, you need to go down a different stairwell. You need to find another hallway, another route to class. That's what happened to the Europeans. You as a student are the Europeans. The Ottoman Turks are the teacher creating the roadblock. Okay, now this might be an inconvenience, but you might in this new exploring for a new route meet people that you hadn't met before, maybe see things you hadn't seen before, and that's what the discovery of the Americas in particular is going to be a result of, the Europeans looking for a new way to get to their trade routes. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Columbus and the other explorers are not looking for new land. Okay, that's not their goal for getting out on these boats and making these dangerous journeys. They're trying to get to these Asian markets. and it just happens to be a coincidence that on their routes they're bumping into new lands, new people, new foods, new products along the way. All of that's the result of the capture of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks. Okay, so a couple of explorers, and I know explorers tend to be a topic you've done at various points in your school careers and different history classes already. The first one we have here is Christopher Columbus. Probably doesn't need too much introduction. He is actually an Italian, but he sails like a lot of explorers for a different country than their own country. Columbus sails for Spain. And his importance, we hear lots of things about him. Columbus discovered that the world was round, Columbus discovered the Americas, none of which are actually true, but his importance to history is nonetheless very important. He does make Europeans aware of the Americas. He's not even, by most accounts, the first one to land in the Americas. We have other explorers from other countries, but he makes the case. When he returns to Europe, and he comes back for a total of 4 times, those journeys across the Atlantic are going to make Europe aware of the Americas. Okay, so here we see Columbus's journey. He's going to leave Spain in August of 1492, a little over 2 months. Okay, again, if we think about it, that journey that now takes 5 or 6 hours by plane took Columbus over 2 months to get across the Atlantic. And he's mainly in the islands in the Caribbean. He's down in places like the Bahamas and Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, that area during most of his journeys. He never actually sets foot in what's now the United States. Okay, in order to understand Columbus, we need to kind of picture the world he's looking at. Columbus, by his own calculations, figured if he went 3,000 miles this direction, he would end up over in the Asian markets, over in the Spice Islands, the East Indies over here. The problem for Columbus was he didn't realize, like most people, that there were these huge big pieces of land in the way. Really, Columbus's mistake was and not exactly to scale, but if we picture in Columbus's mind, the world was a tennis ball. That was the distance he was going around. In reality, for Columbus, the world was more like a basketball. So those 3,000 miles that he thought he had to go turned out to be far less than what he really needed. He would have had to go 3,000 miles across the Atlantic, plus another 3,000 miles across North America, and then really another 8,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. Again, it was a basketball he was going around, not a tennis ball. Okay, another explorer we need to know is Vasco da Gama. Da Gama really does what Columbus wasn't able to do. Okay, Columbus thought he was in India. Okay, and that's what really sparks the controversy and the confusion over the word Indian. He labels the people he meets in the Americas as Indians because that's where he thought he was. Da Gama actually did make it to India. He was a Portuguese explorer, and in 1498 he becomes the first European to reach India by water. This effectively bypassed Constantinople. Okay, so instead of having this roadblock here, okay, Da Gama shows that by water, Europeans could actually go around this way. Okay, and Portugal monopolizes this route. Spain is over time going to realize that Columbus was incorrect, but over time they're going to realize they had something pretty important going on over here in the Americas as well. Okay, a guy named Magellan. We want to associate Ferdinand Magellan with the word circumnavigate. Okay, and this means to sail around the world. Again, this wasn't a dare. It's not like Magellan is out there trying to be the first to circumnavigate the world. He's sailing for Spain. Portugal had monopolized the route around Africa, so Magellan is trying to see, can we actually make it to Asia by sailing west? Can we go east by sailing west? Okay, and he in turn winds up sailing all the way around the world. We have to put a little catch here. Magellan himself makes it about 2/3 of the way. Okay, we see his route here. Magellan makes it all the way from Spain down the coast of South America through what are now known as the Straits of Magellan here at the bottom of South America across the Pacific Ocean. He actually dies in the Philippines. And as of his crew of almost 300 sailors, only about 18 of them carrying Magellan's body make it all the way back. 3 years to go all the way around the world for Magellan's crew. Okay, we have Hernando Cortez. This guy is not so much an explorer as a conquistador. Okay, and Spain, which now we're about 30 years after Columbus, is starting to realize that they have a whole new thing going on over here in the Americas. They're now trying to consolidate their power, and one of the powers that were here were the Aztec Empire. We see Cortez here from Spain's power bases here in the Caribbean, going across the Gulf of Mexico and defeating the Aztec Empire. So we want to associate Cortez with the defeat of the Aztecs. Similarly, we have a guy named Francisco Pizarro, also from Spain. Another big power on this side of the world prior to the arrival of the Spaniards and Columbus were the Incas. And the Incan Empire down in western South America, okay, particularly in modern-day Peru, Pizarro is largely responsible for the defeat of this empire. We'll spend more time later on in Standard 4 on the causes of these defeats. Both Cortez and Pizarro have relatively few men. It's going to be disease. That's the large factor in the defeat of both the Aztecs and the Incas. Okay, we have another explorer, this time from France. We have a guy named Jacques Cartier. And Cartier sails across the Atlantic, arrives much further north than our previous explorers we've seen, and is going to give France a claim on what we now call Quebec, the eastern part of Canada, okay, which even today is the French-speaking part of Canada. So his arrival in 1534 is going to give France claim, and that cultural legacy we still see in Canada today, being a part English-speaking but also part French-speaking country, is largely due to the arrival of Cartier. Okay, and then our last explorer that we have in the standards, that's not to say we only have these explorers in history, but the ones we're responsible for covering in the standards, is Francis Drake. Drake is a privateer, and by privateer we mean he's basically a legal pirate. Pirates did it for their own benefit, privateers did it for their country. So Drake is out there for England, harassing Spanish ships, attacking Spanish forts, stealing gold from Spanish boats. In his efforts to do this, to make life as miserable for Spain as possible, he becomes the second person to circumnavigate the world. I'll be honest, I've always found it a little interesting that he's in the standards. The standards don't say particularly what they want him in there for. As far as I know, he's the only one in the history standards there for being the second to do something. But we see here Drake's voyage. We can see the red and green lines are really his efforts to attack and make life miserable for Spain. The blue line, in which he largely follows Magellan's route down along the coast of South America through the Straits of Magellan, Drake comes much further up the coast. Again, he's harassing the Spanish all along the coast of South and Central America, makes it all the way up to San Francisco in California, before heading across. And I suppose we could say, since Drake survives to tell the tale, he really is the first, although for our purposes, Magellan is the first to circumnavigate, Francis Drake is second. And that concludes what we need to know for Standard 4A.